The United States government under Donald Trump would have us believe that saving Iranian protesters apparently is a priority objective for the United States military. Caroline Leavitt laid this justification out just last night.
What you're hearing publicly from the Iranian regime is quite differently from the messages the administration is receiving privately. And I think the president has an interest in exploring those messages. The president has shown he's unafraid to use military options if and when he deems necessary. And nobody knows that better than Iran.
Yeah, nobody knows that better than Iran. Well, actually, there's a lot of other people that could know it other than Iran. I mean, you could go to Venezuela. They kind of know it pretty good. Nigeria knows it pretty good. Yemen. There's a lot of people that know that. So nothing special about Iran in that one. But let's look at that. What is going on here? What is the whole purpose of this message to Iran that they should recognize that Trump isn't afraid to use military power? This particular iteration of it anyway goes back to President Trump about 10 days or so ago, where he said there's a new red line, which is if Iran and there's protests just happen to be coming up right around the same time he said that, if there's protesters that are killed, then he may have to take action. And you saw that there has been, by all accounts, a lot of protesters have been killed. There's a lot of reasons why that are. We've had a couple of guests on in the last couple of days that give you a lot of the real reason for a lot of this. It's not all domestic. Some of it is natural inside of the country of Iran. They don't want to be ruled by them anymore. That's been going on for a long time. But there are definitely external agitators that have been coming in. We know that that's not. Mike Pompeo is one of those who apparently on one of his X accounts openly said Mossad is already on the ground inside of Iran, etc., trying to stir things up. So we just need to understand that a lot of things are going on with that. It's not all indigenous to Iran. But then the question has to be asked, why is it in America's interest? Because that's this case that's being made by the White House, that the trigger for potential action is the protesters being killed by the regime in Iran. So why is that in America's national interest? Because you remember that in the past, it was the nuclear program. We can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Well, allegedly, according to Trump, that's taken off the table. We obliterated and destroyed their capacity. So they don't have that. So we can't use that one anymore. So now he's on this one here about and saying that the Iran wants to negotiate. He's been saying in a couple of different forums here of late that, they're trying to negotiate. They want to talk to him. I'm not sure what you think that they're supposed to be negotiating, that they would just stop these protests, that they would stop killing, that they would let the people riot out, that would keep going on. I mean, it's unclear what even the standards are that Trump is asking to be negotiated or that would not trigger military action. And there's bigger issues involved, even practical from the United States point. We've had a huge portion of our military power, especially the naval and air power, around Venezuela. That's a long way away from the Middle East. And so to really have a credible threat to start something, you would have to move a lot of combat power into the region. Recall that in 2024, on the two times when the United States helped Israel defend against Iranian responses after Israel had attacked Iranian targets, their embassy, and made an assassination in their capital city, and Iran responded both times. We had assets in the region, a couple of aircraft carrier battle groups, to be specific, to be able to help them. There was other things at Diego Garcia, et cetera. A lot of combat power in the region. Before this 12-day war, same kind of situation. You had a lot of combat power built up. There has been some buildup in the area, but not that much. And we had a strike a week or so ago in Syria, so-called big airstrike, but it was kind of a package. It was kind of an in and out situation. Before we take action here, again, just being practical, if the United States ever wants to make good on Trump's claim here that a red line has been crossed and we need to do something, he can't simply just say, yeah, I'm going to order an airstrike package like the one we used in Syria. We obviously have that in the region. That's just a matter of a small distance further that would go into Iran instead of Syria. But Syria has, or Iran in this case, has threatened that if you attack us again with airstrikes in here, then we'll retaliate against Israel and against your bases scattered throughout the region. So if you do that, that means before you launch one missile, You have to be resourced and prepared that if Iran makes good on that threat, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But if they do and they start attacking us here, you could be in a war. And if we don't have combat power in the region, you can't react and you can't respond. Because once you use up whatever missiles are already in the inventory there, that's it. You're out. And now you've got to ship a bunch of others. And, you have this mad dash to move things into the region. And that's all going to take time. Meanwhile, Iran it's their country. So they have everything that they need right there. They don't have to deploy anything anywhere. They could literally just be raining missiles down and there's nothing you could do to stop it. So he could get us into a world of hurt if he gets careless and reckless and says, I'm going to do it anyway. And it's basically just hoping against hope that Iran does not do this. And then there's the bigger issues. What is the objective of the United States? Why would you want to use this military power? Is it to regime change? Is it that would you try and decapitate the Ayatollah and his government? That seems pretty unlikely to me. They're well aware of that. They have continuity of government plans. The COG, as some call it in the United States. They apparently already have, if the Ayatollah gets taken out, they have immediate successors, and then apparently 2 or 3 levels beyond that, so that they can continue their government. And they have things spread out all over the country. It's a huge country. I think it's like 3 or 4 times bigger geographically than the country of Iraq. We all know how big that one is. We spent a lot of disastrous time in there. They also have their assets spread all over the place. Their offensive assets are spread also. It's not something you can come in with a strike package and just take out their offensive capability in one big blow and say, all right, now then they can't do anything, because they're aware of that. So they have spread this stuff out to prevent that very outcome. You may also know that during the so-called 12-day war in June of last year, there was very little time, and maybe not any, when American aircraft crossed into Iranian airspace. It's not just that none of their air defense systems work, is that we didn't test it. We fire from standoff, much like the Russians do on a routine basis against Ukraine. So they fire missiles and stuff from beyond the range. Well, you can do that for a while, and you can do that to some degree. But if you ever get to the point to where you have to fly over the country, you're going to have some more problems if they're deciding that they're going to take you on, because they have some capacity. Even if it's not as good as what we think it is in the West, it's not awful, and it does function, and it can knock down our aircraft. So before you take one step and launch one missile, you have got to be clear that you can take this all the way to fruition, and that whatever that cost would be is commensurate with what we would gain. Now, on that standard, it should be crystal clear there is no benefit to the United States. Our security is not threatened now, nor has it ever been with Iran, categorically. There is nothing that they have, nothing that they can possess that we could not take out if we were threatened. If they were going to attack us, we could obliterate them. They know that. That's why they haven't, in their history since the 1979 revolution forward, never have tried to take us on directly, never have even responded all the way through, even when we've hit them with assassinating their senior commanders, assassinated other people, etc. A lot of things that we've done. We hit them, twice in 24. We also hit them in last year. They have not responded because they are not strong enough to do that. That's what we need to understand. And therefore, we don't need to be taking any action. Therefore, to risk all those things I just mentioned and the attacks on our bases right now, which are not at threat at the moment, that they would become threatened if we attacked into Iran. It would be height of foolishness to just hope against hope that Iran would not do anything to us. So this needs to be stillborn right now. This needs to not go anywhere. Trump wants to walk this one back or talk his way out of it. Perfect. That's what he should do. He should not say, oh, well, I've already set a red line, so I have to make good on it. It's bad to say that there's red lines and you don't follow it up, but that's not as bad as making good on something you promised on a red line if it's going to harm you more. If one American dies because we foolishly cross that red line and say, now we're going to start a military operation, and it turns into a war and Americans die because of it, all of our blood will be on the decision of the president. Because I'm just telling you categorically right now, well, no missiles have fired. There is nothing threatening our national security and no need whatsoever to put one American at risk in the Middle East. Let's hope that it stays that way. Let's hope this remains theoretical and hypothetical, and we never have to actually play this video back in the future, because it does happen. That's what I hope. That's not all Caroline had to say yesterday. She also had to talk about something else, which is in some ways even more egregious and troubling, and that is on the administration's still just obsession with Greenland.
She was asking about Greenland, and I think the president was very clear last night. He said that he wants to see the United States acquire Greenland because he feels that if we do not, then it will eventually be acquired or even perhaps hostily taken over by either China or Russia, which is not a good thing for the United States or for Europe or for Greenland as well. Let's not forget, it would not just be in the best interest of the United States, but perhaps it would be in the best interest of Greenland as well, to be part of the United States and protected by the United States.
Yeah, listen, we know best. We know what's good for you. I know that Greenland is absolutely adamant about this, and their elected leaders are emphatically rejecting this idea. They said, we don't want to be a part of the United States. We have no interest in having anything that belongs to the U.S. put on our shores. Denmark is saying they're categorically against it. They say it's not for sale. You can't just take it. We're thinking about saying it's an Article 5 situation with NATO. Sure, they're all saying that, but really, when you get down to it, we know what's best for you. Just listen. Trust me. It would be better for you for me to do what I'm telling you I want to do instead of what you think is good for yourself. What do you know? I mean, just on the surface of it, how absurd is that for the spokesman of the White House, for the President of the United States to come out there and literally, that's not a mocking thing. That's not a joke. She actually said it was all serious. It's actually best for Europe, even though Europe is across the board categorically against this. I don't know if anybody in Europe is for this. Certainly all the major powers are not. Greenland is definitely not for it. Denmark specifically is adamantly opposed to it. And yet there she is with a straight face saying, oh, this is all better for them. I know what's best for you. Just take it. Just, suck it down and just take it, because that's what's going to happen here. And I mean, we have to ask the same questions here that we did with the Iran situation. Where is the vital national interest of the United States? Now, what President Trump has said recently, and some claim that, oh, well, this is because a lot of ice has been melted in the Arctic, so now it's opened up more waterways. And what? What is your point there, Gary? If you can have that, if you can bring that map up, if you have that handy, let's just take a look at the Arctic here, and you'll see right away that, okay, there's Greenland. That's fine. That's a big piece there. But then when you roll around, you see, there's Canada. Canada's up in the Arctic. Then you have there's the United States. If you spin a little bit further, it's a place called Alaska. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's up there in the Arctic, and we have a whole coastline where we're up there. And then if keep rolling, and who's that up there? That's Russia. All that next part there where it's green there, right across the Bering Straits, right across the way from us, we're already neighbors with Russia. So Trump said we have to take Greenland because we're not going to be neighbors with Russia and China. Okay, we are already in the Arctic neighbors with Russia. So you can't, unless you're going to change the geography, that already exists and you can't unexist it. And what would it matter if it already exists there. The same thing with Greenland, has for this whole time. And China, you don't see China on that map anywhere because they don't have an Arctic territory. They're not up there. So for them to get there, they would have to traverse all kinds of seas and open waters, which they don't have the power projection to do. That is a complete canard. There's no truth to that. There's no risk. There's no threat that why China would literally risk war with America. Where we have a military base on Greenland for the purpose of long-range observations, if any missiles were to come over from the North Pole in our direction, that's the whole reason we have that China would seek to militarily occupy or take Greenland from a distance from which they cannot project power that long, from which they have no interest or benefit to do so. There's no reason why they would even desire it in their worst weird fantasies. Russia also, why in God's name would they want to militarily take Greenland when they already have an Arctic presence, and there's more Russian coastline than there is anybody else's. I think maybe Canada when you add all those islands together. But in terms of just space around, you see that probably something close to 40% of it or so, maybe even more than that, is already Russian. So why do they need to risk military conflict with America to take that? They wouldn't. It's irrational to the extreme. So the justification that we're using makes literally no sense. And so that there's some of the more of the ice is melting and the more of the seas are navigable. And that means what? So what? It's international waters. We defend the freedom of the seas. That's one of the claims we make while we're patrolling the waters, the 100-mile waters in between Taiwan and China, because of its freedom of navigation. We want to keep the international waterways open, except around Greenland for some reason. You see what I'm saying? None of this makes any sense at all. There's no American value here. There's no American national security at risk. There's not even any gain to make. We don't benefit anything. This idea that there's all these rare earths and a bunch of other stuff in Greenland, boy, maybe we can go and get that. Number one, you could probably just have a negotiated deal and have a business interest either with Greenland or Denmark. And I'm sure that they're interested in doing business. Maybe they would even have some of that. I don't know. But even if they would, you understand, most of Greenland is an ice sheet. So most of it you can't, whatever there may be under the ground is underneath a lot of ice, which makes it nearly impossible economically to mine the stuff anyway. So there's not a lot there. There's not even a lot of potential there that's cost effective to go get. So this is irrational in its totality. And it's just like we did with Venezuela, just like we're trying to do with Iran. We're just trying to compel and coerce people to do what we want. And there's no demonstrable benefit to the U.S. to make all of these risks. It's weird. And it's counterproductive for us and something we need to avoid. So just like Trump hasn't so far made good on his red lines on Iran, let's hope that continues to be the case. And let's hope that this turns into just be another talking and loud exercise, but no action is being taken. Because we already see that, as a matter of fact, CBS is reporting this morning that one Florida congressman is already putting forth a bill that says, hey, you know what? How about we just annex Greenland? Maybe that'll be swell. Of course, you realize Greenland belongs to somebody else. Greenland is its own place, and it's also belonging to Denmark there. And then here you see this congressman wants to make it the 51st state, and they want to annex it. Does that sound familiar? That's what we condemn Russia for doing in the Donbass area. You understand that? That's not lost on anyone outside of America, apparently outside of Florida anyway. Why do we want to do that? Why would we want to take on that? It's absurd at face value. It's just dumb as it looks, and yet there it is. An actual U.S. congressman has actually put this bill down, probably just to make Trump happy and make him ingratiate himself to Trump. Most likely that's all he's doing. But the fact that it's there and it's not being roundly condemned, and you see it's just being reported as news here, one never knows what Trump may do. Let's hope that doesn't go any further. One last thing I want to talk about today, kind of in the bigger picture thing, and that is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth addressed a bunch of businessmen the other day. You may have seen that we want to have a $1.5 trillion defense budget for FY27. And part of the thing that Hegseth has already been talking about is the industrial capacity and the tech development of our defense industrial businesses all across the board. And he spoke to a bunch of folks and he said, hey, you know what? Here's our vision. Here's where we want to go. Watch this.
Since the end of the Cold War, the defense industrial base in our country has consolidated. This makes it difficult, if not impossible, for new creators of technical innovations to win business at our department. The result is a risk-averse culture that prevents us from providing our warfighters with the best resources that America has to offer. That ends today. Simply put, the United States must win the strategic competition for 21st century technological supremacy. Artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, quantum, hypersonics, and long-range drones. If you talk to Elon Musk long enough, he will tell you how important hypersonics and long-range drones are, and he's 100% correct. Space capabilities, directed energy, and biotechnology are the new areas of global competition.
Okay, just as a matter of the record, if I want to know what the next thing is in the armed warfare and where trends are going, why am I going to talk to Elon Musk? Elon Musk is an amazing businessman. Whatever you may think of him personally, he has this huge business empire, and he's cutting edge in a lot of things. So he can tell you where the business is going. He can tell you a lot about technology. But when you're talking about what's going to work in war, why am I talking to Elon Musk? That's not who I should be talking to. You should be talking to people who are versed in warfare and who are versed in what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, who are projecting and looking forward to what may be coming next and how that may affect warfighting capability in, say, in the South China Seas, between China and Taiwan, between, God forbid, if we should ever fight over there, but if it did, what would that look like, etc. Those are the things that we need to be talking about. People who are versed in the military art. Then they tell the industrial capacity and the developers, all right, here's what we need, develop this at a cost-effective way, ideally, but this is what we need to win the next war, and then let's do some iterations, etc. That's who it's supposed to be led by. In the past, when we've had success about this, and probably one of the biggest successes technologically we've ever had was when we had, I think it was called the Big Five, and it was the M1 tank, the Bradley fighting vehicle, the Apache gunship, and I think it was the Paladin howitzer, and I can't remember the fifth one, but it was stuff that was in the 1970s, which we had this whole technological development and a whole series of things that all went together, that were all tied together strategically. They were tied together militarily, and said, all right, here's what we want to accomplish. Here's what we need to make it happen. Here's what our adversaries are doing. Here's what ours need to, so we have some overmatch and all the things it is. It was led by combat experienced people. Most of it was led by guys who had fought in World War II at high levels, and a lot of the generals especially. Guys who had rich combat experience, successful combat experience, not just combat experience, not just time in, but time in the crucible of war where it was at the highest. And those guys made sure that, the vehicles had the capabilities they needed, lots of overruns, a lot of stuff, especially with the Bradley fighting vehicle. But ultimately, it did perform very well in combat because they did make sure it had the things that it absolutely needed. The M1 tank probably is the number one, because especially at the time in the 70s and early 80s, it was absolutely huge overmatch to anything that anyone else in the world had, but primarily the Warsaw Pact and the Soviet Union. But these guys led all of that together. They integrated everything into how it would fight together. It was always part of the plan. When you lead, however, with technology, when you lead with industry and subordinate the strategic and the military applications of those things, you got trouble. And I'm speaking firsthand on this. One of my assignments in the mid-2000s was at Fort Bliss, Texas, where I was part of the Future Combat Systems, and I saw up close and personal, directly involved in the plan, to see how the concept was fine. It was just called a system of systems, where they had a lot of automated things. They had a lot of drones. They had different kinds of tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, etc. All this stuff was together with an integrated communications network, which was supposed to tie the whole system together. Problem is that there was so many ways that this thing was going to fail. Someone like me, who at the time was a major, but I had fought in high intensity conflict. I had fought in the counterinsurgency. So I'd been already had a lot of the experience, not the least of which that I'd studied it, but because I'd also lived it. So I knew that a lot of these things weren't going to work. Somebody with combat experience, and I was most assuredly not the only one. Most of my fellow field grade officers or even junior officers who had fought in Desert Storm and the like, or in 2003, in the maneuver phase of the Operation Iraqi Freedom, these people knew what would work and what wouldn't work. And especially at that mid-ranking level at the time, we knew why things wouldn't work. The people at the top, however, were guided mainly by industry. Boeing was one of the big ones on that, and their priority, understandably, is to make money. So they could care less how things work together. They just want it to work. They just want it to be purchased. So they made all kinds of claims, all kinds of reasons why it was good. That's why I say when you listen to Elon Musk, that should be a red flag. Elon Musk is going to be about Elon Musk. He's going to be about his companies. He's going to be about making money. He is first and foremost about making money. He's a businessman. You don't want to lead with a businessman. You want to lead with somebody who has a sober understanding of combined arms, of combat, of how wars are fought, of strategy, somebody who can tie it all together. And then they will give the requirements to industry. And then you get the experts like Elon Musk. And here I'll say, I'm telling you, Elon Musk, here's what I want. Can you make it? Can you make it in a time frame that's usable and at a cost that's affordable? If the answer is no, then we have to change something. Either you have to change your hope for strategies or something, or you got to change the technology, or you got to use something else that's going to work. But you got to have something that's going to help, that's going to be cost effective, that can be done in a time frame that's usable for the potential future. That's how it's supposed to work. But I fear that the Hegseth operation here is going to be primarily about making money. And it's ironic, if not perverse, that he says, oh, we've identified that since the end of the Cold War, we've consolidated defense industrial base too much. And now we're going, that ends today. We're going to spread it out. But now we're talking about lopping in another $500 billion in a single year. I mean, what are the chances that ends up with something good? Probably nothing. You're just throwing just bucket loads of money, tractor trailers, just dumping it out there, dump trucks full of money onto a problem with the system that can't handle that kind of an increase. And you're going to have all these people, all these companies that have all this money and all the systems in place to use that money are the only ones that can take it. And you say, well, we'll create new companies. Well, maybe they'll do some of that around the edges, but I'm just telling you, I was involved with this. I understand it. I've studied. A lot of other people who have studied it will tell you categorically that's nonsense. The people who have the money will make sure that they're the only ones that can keep making the money. The Boeings, the Lockheeds, the Raytheons, they're all going to make sure that those small number of super big companies remain the only ones that can do it. And so when you have somebody like Elon, who's also, obviously incredibly wealthy, the most wealthy man, he'll make sure that only his company can do the things that matter. Just trust me, I know what's going to work here. So that's why I'm saying don't listen to him, because he'll make sure that, oh yeah, I can tell that this is the way of war. Go down this path here. Makes a lot of money for me. And oh, by the way, I'm the only one that can do that. What a coincidence that's going to be. So it's just ludicrous to think that suddenly, this stops today, as he said so dramatically. It's not going to stop anything. You're just going to feed the trough even more. It's going to be even worse. That's just the truth of it, folks. It's time we get a little bit of sanity involved in the process here. And like we always do here at Daniel Davis Deep Dive, Gary and I are all about, we are unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you the full truth. It doesn't matter what anybody likes it or not. This is the truth. And all these things we're talking about here, we're going to keep doing that for you because you deserve it. And we hope that people will finally start paying attention, because if people don't pay attention to these truths that we're talking about here, some pretty unsavory results can happen for our country in ways that we may not be able to recover from in the future. But that's the truth of it. Appreciate you guys today, by the way. I'm going to be traveling, but I'm still going to be coming to you probably from New York tomorrow. We got some great shows with Colonel Doug McGregor and John Mearsheimer. Really, really good shows tomorrow. Don't miss those. I promise you're not going to want to. A lot of interesting things to be discovered in. Thanks very much, folks, and I'll see you tomorrow on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.